Hello and good afternoon and welcome to the Sign Hub. My name's Sean Smyth and I'm going to be talking to you over the next few minutes about the future of printed signage. So if you're not in the right place, do stay. It's a nice comfortable chair and it's not quite standing room only. What I'm going to be talking about is some market forecasts, talking about some technology developments on the printing side particularly, a little bit about creativity and innovation, some directions, some good examples hopefully, where the market's going. I'm now looking at print as part of a wider digital world and some of the things that print might be able to do to fight back against this inexorable development of the internet and the electronic world. A little bit about showrooming and webrooming and some things that are happening with packaging developments which are going to be important in the purchasing decision in store or out of store going forward. And then I got a little bit about some futures, and I think there's a video that somebody else has made that if you haven't seen before is quite interesting. Before I start, a little bit about Smithers Pira. We're a company. We're based in the UK. We have a couple of sites there and in North America. We work with a group of different people throughout the world who are experts in different fields, and we serve a whole variety of customers, printing and otherwise. And our predominant product is information. And we sell information, hopefully allowing people to make better decisions, more informed, more quickly. We work in print, we work in paper, packaging. There's a lot of stuff going on in food contact. My particular part of the market is in the printing side, and we have a few well-known people that use our services. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in printing now for rather more years than I care to remember, and I'm a print techie. So I'm interested in the technology, what it will do. Much more important than that is how you can make money out of doing it. And I work for Smithers Pira as a consultant. I get involved in a lot of the market's forecasts, and we do a lot of studies. But I don't solely work for them. I also act as a journalist. I write for various trade magazines, and I'm a technology editor. And I also get my hands dirty. I'm a non-exec at a few print companies, so I actually try and practice what I preach. So if we look at the signage market in general, it's a very, very broad church. But I'm going to be particularly thinking about things that have ink put onto some surface to normally promote, advertise some form of activity. So you've got posters, banners, flags, point of sale, huge variety of point of sale, of course, indoor, outdoor, freestanding display bins. I get involved very heavily in discussion about this is packaging, this is an FSD, but it doesn't really make a huge amount of difference. You have permanent ones, temporary ones, then you have down to very small shelf markers, wobblers, labels, flooring vinyls, window vinyls, ceiling displays, huge variety of different types of POS. And I am told by somebody who should know that typically a reasonably sized store, and I'm going to be coming back to this, will have 12,000 discrete items of POS trying to promote the activities. And as we go into store, we don't always see all of those things. So what can we do to make the message stand out a little bit more? I mentioned I'm going to talk a little bit about some statistics. And Smithers Pira spends a lot of time and spends a lot of money researching various different print markets. And this graph is a value of the output. So this is the invoice value of companies making POS, and it's the retail value of their product. It includes substrates, it includes the printing. In some cases, it'll include the installation. And we've split it down into sheet fed, flexo, screen. There's a little bit of electrophotography, but that tends to be used in prototyping and proofing, and inkjet. And this is the value in terms of dollars. It's in constant dollars, 2012 values, and that strips out any effect of inflation, and it strips out any effect of currency exchange rate variability. This is global figures, and it shows that in 2013 we value the market at a little bit north of $50 billion for all of the different varieties that are involved. So it's a big, big game. But this blue thing up at the top is the value of the inkjet, and it has been for some time exploding. It's been taking share away from screen. We all know about that. Litho's not been doing too badly, but it tends to just get on and do some low or lower value things in there. But generally, unlike many graphics markets, it's growing, which is always a good sector to be in if you're in there. If we look at the same market figures, but this time in terms of square meters produced, we don't use that, but if you divide the number in terms of billions of square meters, you see that we're talking about approaching 15 billion square meters of signage in 2013. And we see the forecast growing strongly going forward. Now, it's not purely Europe, it's not North America. There's a lot of growth, obviously, in the newly industrialized or emerging markets, but it's global. It's happening everywhere. Now, in this instance, you'll see that the inkjet is a relatively small proportion of the overall market. But with the, if we go back to the slide, if I can go back to the slide. Can I go back? Oh, yeah, I can go back. The value as against the volumes side of it shows it's hugely interesting in terms of the price per square meter. All of the money is going into inkjet development, far more than any of the other sectors. And if we look at the market now in terms of the print share going forward, 2008 figures in terms of the volume and the value, you'll see there. Where it's red, it's in decline. And sadly, we're seeing Flexo and Screen losing share significantly and quicker, and we don't see that coming back anymore. Sheet-fed litho, it's gaining a little bit of share, but it's generally reasonably static. But the one that's growing strongly in all areas is inkjet. And we see that sort of come 2018, it's going to be well over half of the value of all printed signage figures. And the reason, I suppose, for that is it does things that the traditional analog printing cannot achieve in there. But before we sort of go away from the analog side, a mention for sheet-fed litho, because it's actually not very sexy. I haven't seen any offset machines at this show, but the amount of development and the pace of change that's happened in the litho market is enormous in terms of workflows, computer-to-plate systems, and the setups. And I was talking to a major German manufacturer who's got a bank of large format KBA and Man-Roland presses, and they tell me that they are cost-effective against inkjet down to about 60 sheets for large format laminated onto a display or going straight onto a POS. Obviously, they can't handle a very thick material above a very small F4G flute, maybe 0.4 of a millimeter wide. You have to do some lamination apart from that. But the fast setup, the changeover speed is improved hugely, and also the color control that's available on these machines is totally different to the sectors that we used to be involved with. But inkjet and flatbed inkjet particularly sort of growing strongly, and you're seeing now new machines, new models coming out. They're faster, their quality is better. They can print onto a wider range of substrates. You're getting LED curing, you're getting latex ink curing. You have a whole variety of different technologies available, lowering the environmental impact of the applications. Large format, 3 by 1.6 meters, is now fairly standard. Lots and lots of competition going into there. And instead of having a normal shot of a nice flatbed inkjet machine, the most interesting one, I was at Inca Digital a few weeks ago, and that's them loading one of the onsets onto a lorry. And they tell me they're doing that once or twice a week now, as the volumes of these machines going into the market is speeding up and growing ever more strongly. And as they get into the hands of the converters and the printers, they're finding new applications that are broadening the capabilities of signage. It's moving it further. It's not just ink onto a bit of board or a bit of textile anymore. There are many, many more things that are going on. I found this one over in the States, printed on a Fujifilm Acuity with UV, and it's for a museum. And this was a museum that was showing a new fossil display, and they did a high build system in here. So all they're doing is printing effectively the background in 2 or 3 passes, and the fossil itself, raising it up, getting a very interesting look and feel to it in 13 or 14 passes to get a bit of texture, a bit of tactile improvement in there, and making the print more relevant and more exciting and doing different things to it that you can't do with any other of the media that are happening outside there. I was very struck by that. There are lots and lots of examples, some nice Nike stuff in there where you're using the tactile nature of the print, which is a significant difference that you cannot achieve using a purely digital alternative. Now, of course, for signage, the biggest market is retail and the point of sale. Very wide variety of that. But a couple of interesting things that sort of came out is that the top 10 global retailers, Metro, Tesco, Carrefour, Walmart, of course, are stupendously large. $115 trillion worth of retail sales happening apparently in 2012 out of the top 10 areas. They will typically, in a big supermarket, be handling between 50 and 60,000 line items, and there are going to be 12,000 printed items from shelf markers, big posters, window vinyls, floor, freestanding displays, all the clutter, for want of a better word, that is around there in that. And the people that do retail analysis tell us that up to 70% of purchasing decisions are actually made in store. So it's pretty obvious that they wouldn't be doing this unless there was a good return on it. And the print media has a very influential role in determining what you're going to buy. But the other thing that's interesting is that people have gone and looked at it, and of these 12,000 items, you actually notice very, very few of them. And I don't know how they came up with this figure, but maybe only 40 out of 12,000 are seen. So from the printing perspective, what can we do to make the signage more noticeable? How can I grab the attention of the offer? And I suppose ultimately it's down to the offer itself. And if the offer is a very good one, people will tend to come and find it. But you're seeing lots and lots of different changes. So the freestanding display is a permanent display, but we'll whip the top off and put a different one on. And we'll keep changing it, making it more relevant. You're seeing now that, particularly with inkjet, instead of having the overall the same thing, we'll put it down and we'll have versioning. So we'll have the one for Munich is going to be different to the one for Berlin, is going to be different to the one in Dortmund. We're seeing versioning to customers now, and I'll talk about that in a moment when we get into the iBeacons and the other things. And we're getting them to be interactive, so they're not just static things that lurk in the background. You can start doing things with them, and when you start doing things with them, you get a whole different area. One of the rather concerning things, or certainly concerning for me, is I am not a happy shopper. I will go shopping if I have my arm up my back from my good lady wife, but I do not find retail as an environment I want to be in. And I now see that people are starting to talk about it's beyond shopping, it's entertainment. Now, for me, going to a supermarket is absolutely the last thing I would do unless I have to, because I've run out of food and clearing things. But you're seeing now at Halloween, the shops, or parts of the shops, I should say, are transformed into dens. And they're changing things all the time, and they're doing fantastic things in store to make the entertainment. It's to drive the brand awareness, and there are very few limits on them. And you can get some really interesting and entertaining things. And it's print heavy. This is not on a screen. It's not through your mobile phones. It's not doing anything else. It's purely the power of ink onto a substrate, cleverly finished, and positioned where you're seeing lots and lots of people. Because printing, sticking a nice image onto a piece of paper, cutting it out, is not enough. We're now finding that people are looking at the value chains, how these retailers use these things. We're getting into installations, removals, adding value to the things that you're looking at. You should be, as a supplier to those, if you can get deeper in with your customers. The good POS printers don't recall themselves as printers anymore. They're part of the retail supply chain optimization teams, and they get in at the very early stages. They get involved in the marketing, the design of the campaigns. They're refreshing them, they're reacting to them. They're obviously putting, installing and refreshing and taking out installations, but they're looking for new applications. And I was up at an innovative company up in the north of England a few weeks ago, and they've developed sort of POS and signage for schools as a reading area. And I thought, well, that looks quite entertaining. But I took it home, and my daughter is now a primary school teacher. And she fell over herself when she saw these things. There's giant books that open up, and then you've got the books inside them. And that's exactly what people are looking for. How you take what we've done in store, what we've done in this retailtainment, innovate it, put it into different areas. And I thought it was a fantastic example. So it's not just in store for the signage, but it's pretty well, say, governed with the value of the stuff that goes into retail is in there. This clicker works when it wants to, not when I want it to. So in there. So what's happening now, because it's 2014, people tell me, and we don't live in an analog age anymore. We live in a digital age. And your signage is going to have to start reacting and working with the digital ages. But before it does that, there are things that you can do to it. So you can put movement sensors into window displays, so they light up as you walk past, and you can do different things like that. You're attracting attention. You're grabbing the eye of your 1 in 12,000 areas that you're doing. We're seeing people use QR codes. So you scan your QR code and you get a message on your mobile phone. I'm always a bit concerned about QR codes because I tend not to use them because I've never got the right app for them and it doesn't quite do what I want to. But lots and lots of people are doing that to get the offers. But you don't have to have a QR code now. You can use any printed item to become recognized by your store. But you also want the capability of the signage now to, instead of just promote a store or an item, let's actually really react with individuals. And you're now starting getting eye beacons coming in there. So there's a transponder in the back of the sign. As soon as it sees a Bluetooth-enabled phone, it automatically will send a message to that phone promoting an offer, making a money off or giving something. I'm not totally sure how that's going to come out, but there's some interesting stuff going on fairly soon. in there. But the really clever things I think that are happening now is the image recognition and the changes that people who go into store and buy things are happening, because they're not standing still. Webrooming, showrooming. So showrooming is the idea that you wander into a store, you have a look at the item, you choose it, you work out how good it is or how bad it is, you find out the information about it, you touch it, you feel it, then you go home, you go on the internet and you buy it at a much lower price, not from that retailer who you've seen what they happen, but you buy it from Amazon or somebody else. And so you have a store in the UK like Jessop's, the big camera store, and that was exactly what people were doing. They would go and have a look at the cameras, they would get the knowledgeable sales staff would explain their capabilities, they'd then go home and buy them off Amazon or on the internet for a lower price. So you discover in store, you buy online, and that's a big issue for retailers. And over in the States, their Amazon Flow is effectively trying to recognize every product, every branded product that you can buy from Amazon, either from the pack itself or from the POS, and you have a one-click ordering system that will allow you to order that item at the best price from Amazon or any of its affiliated retailers. And that's a big issue for the retail, because effectively you can't compete with the pack of a packet of Cheerios, but you can with the POS that promotes it. And so if the retailer has an app that links in, so when you go on to Amazon, instead of going to Amazon Flow, it takes you to the Walmart app or the Tesco's or the Sainsbury's app or whichever one it is, then all of a sudden, instead of buying it from Amazon, you might find there's a lot more information that retailer has that can do. It can sell it to you at a different price, and it can move it on. But the pack is going to be owned by the brand owner, whereas the POS can be owned by the retailer. And those are going to make it far more interesting as we see how the online world is going to be competing with the offline world. And you're finding that the POS will add interactivity. Whoops. On that area. In some airports in Japan now, as you sort of have to check in as you go through the area, you'll find that some online retailers will put a whole raft of things on there that you can photograph and click on there, and when you come back from your trip or your holiday, you've done your shopping. We're seeing iBeacons. Now, I've seen various apps and I've seen various things, but frankly, as I'm traipsing around the supermarket, I want to get out as quickly as I possibly can. And having my phone beep at me with an SMS text message every 3 minutes that I can buy some orange juice slightly more cheaply or some red wine slightly more cheaply is not really the message that I want to hear. If I want to get an item, I'd rather attract it myself and pull it to me rather than push it to me. That may or may not happen, but we're seeing the first rollout in Waitrose, the upmarket UK supermarket, are launching iBeacon in Swindon. They're a very innovative retailer and a very successful retailer. It's going to be very interesting to see how they come out of there. I believe that a less intrusive item will work, and I tend to use the WIFM principle, which is what's in it for me. And if there's something in it for me, then I'll react and do it accordingly. So as I have registered with my Ben & Jerry's ice cream, I've clicked on a bit of signage that says, see what we can do for you today, and lo and behold, I can get a 1 out of a free ice cream or something, and that's going to be me asking the signs, what can you do for me to make it more attractive and make it more interesting in there. And you're seeing people starting to do promotions like this, say get a free ice cream when you buy a Happy Meal or whatever it might be, and you're seeing competitions, so you can win a car or something, and that actually allows me to start integrating and working with either a retailer or a brand and doing a lot more out of the signage as we go through it. So we're seeing lots and lots of new applications for signs, and those are driving the adoption of signage in more and more areas. Shall I talk about the futures, hopefully, if... okay. Whoop. It goes... right, okay. We're seeing lots and lots of digital signage. Now, I flew over from Heathrow yesterday, and frankly, if I see the AccuCenter or Accenter advertisement that they can transform my business one more time after sitting in the display lounge of an airport for a delayed flight, and this thing is on loop every 40 seconds with sound, and very intrusive sound, I'm not going to be very interested in seeing something that I can't control. Ad Kiosk is now developing apps that you stick into shopping areas, you press on there, and you get the advertisement you want to see. Really. I don't really want to see advertisements as such, but there are some very clever people putting signs into different areas, and the content of those is going to be developing and is going to change. I think it was once thought of as going to be the panacea, and in the UK, you may remember about 3 or 4 years ago, Tesco's was going to have its own Tesco TV, and they put in a huge amount of cash, screens throughout the store, and they're not there now because people just do not want to have TV blaring at them as they're going through a supermarket. So they've ripped them out. Didn't work very well. Cost quite a lot of money on that. But digital signage is going to happen if it's things that people want to see. It is growing, definitely, and it certainly is replacing some print. But print can react against it and do other things to it. Because what digital signage should be is like this, which is not quite how it is at the moment. And this is a video from Corning, the glass company, and they have a fantastic video or set of videos. They've updated it recently, which is a day in the life of glass. And this is a minute and a half out of the day in the life of glass. And this is how digital signage should be. So you see that she actually buys the cardigan that she's been looking at on the screen. And when that type of technology sort of reaches retail, and I think the traditional printed sign has probably one or two things to compete against. But I suppose the good news for that side is that that glass has to be printed to make it reactive. Thoroughly recommend it. It's Corning, and it's a day in the life of glass. And they've just updated it. So to finish my time, I'm married to a teacher. She always says, so what does that mean? We see printed signage growing over the next 5 years in both value and volume. But it's going to have to work hard. It's going to have to do more than it does at the moment. It's going to have to work with the digital world, because that is really changing sort of very quick. You've got to innovate as suppliers to it. Look at the value chain. What do your customers use your print for? I can do that for you. I can install it, deinstall it. I can get involved in the design and the campaign future. And you can broaden the functionality of the print. And I think those are the messages that we see as being important in the future of POS. So thank you very much indeed for your attention.